Hello, everyone, and welcome to No Offseason, presented by MassMutual. I'm Zena.
I'm Sabreena Merchant.
And I'm Ben Pickman.
Today on the show, the 2025 WNBA Draft is in the books, and as predicted, Paige Bueckers out of UConn was the #1 pick. She's headed to the Dallas Wings, but what else happened? Who were the big winners and losers of the night? What was the vibe like on the ground and in the building? Now, we're recording this late Monday night. I just got home from the inaugural Golden State Valkyries official draft event. It was just for the media, where we were inside the building as we watched the entire ESPN broadcast on a big screen alongside other members of the media. But as you heard at the top, I am joined by Sabreena Merchant and our colleague Ben Pickman. Ben, you were in the building at the Shed at Hudson Yards in NYC. That is a very long name for a building, now that I just said that out loud. But at the Shed, this is a larger venue than it was last year. Give us the inside scoop. What was it like at the Shed at Hudson Yards in NYC?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit the headliner first. It was a much bigger venue than in past years. This is I think the 4th or 5th draft that I've been to in person. And the first few were at a small studio in the West Village called Spring Street Studios. And very quickly, the WNBA outgrew that space. Last year, the league held the draft at BAM, Brooklyn Academy of Music, which is an old theater in a very nice theater in Brooklyn, but also felt very crammed and everyone was on top of each other. The space this year was very spacious. It had separate floors for the draft, and there's usually kind of like a cocktail mixer happy hour with sponsors and agents and other kind of types of people before the draft. So it had plenty of space for everybody to schmooze. It had a much, much bigger media workroom and press room and press area than in past years. And so it just felt a lot more comfortable. The actual like stage and reception and waiting area where they were seated felt a little bit bigger. There was just more room to breathe.
Yeah.
And the draft is just this like very fun event because at its core, you're just watching people realize their lifelong dreams, right? Like for all the basketball and analysis that we're going to talk about on this show, like that is literally what is happening here. Like these players have had dreams of making the W for many of them since they were kids, and those dreams are being realized in real time. And so you see so many of the emotions, and yeah, there's obviously like is this player a good fit? How are they going to translate? Some of these players might not be on rosters in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks time. Like that's just the hard reality of the WNBA draft. But you see so much like positive energy on draft night. That's one of the prevailing emotions, whether it's, tonight or in past drafts that I've attended.
And that's so fitting that you get a bigger space right as the WNBA is just gaining, and women's basketball just gaining all this momentum. It feels very apropos for that to be the venue for this year specifically. Sabreena, you and I were similar in that we both watched a broadcast. And I got to ask both of you. So Sabreena, you watched this at home and I watched it too. Did it feel like it was like awkwardly quiet sometimes when the broadcast was going? Like it felt as if the audience was listening to the broadcast?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, right? Like Ryan and Rebecca and Andrea are talking in the room for the television production, but also everyone in the room can also hear them, right? And so
it's awkward to me. I felt like I was like literally asking other media members in the room, like, does the NBA do it like that? Have they done it like this in the past? It just felt so weird for them to be like fully analyzing Paige Bueckers as she's just sitting there with the rest of her draft class.
Yeah, they host the event for all of us, for the people in attendance and the people not in attendance. Yeah. So it is a big role that the ESPN crew fulfills.
There you go. Yeah, no, I was like, I feel like there should be a DJ somewhere for the people in the room to not have to like listen to any of this. But for
there was a DJ, Zena. There was a DJ in the room.
Okay.
I should
they
say,
just weren't super loud.
They weren't super loud, and during the broadcast, you were listening to the broadcast. So you're right on this. Everyone is
just like a commercial break DJ. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, kind of a lot of pre festivities.
Got it. Okay, got it. I just felt that was so interesting. But Sabreena, when you look at this draft, sitting at home, what were some of the things that stood out to you in terms of how they like kind of entered into it, because there's a 30 minutes before the actual draft, and then the actual full draft. And, you got to see clips that you usually do as folks analyze the players right before they're picked and after they're picked, etc. What was it like for you watching it?
Yeah, well, I would say the most surprising thing actually did happen pre-draft, which is when Georgia Amor came to the WNBA countdown set with Russell Westbrook, because Russell Westbrook was her stylist for the event. Nothing could have prepared me for that moment of learning that that was why Russell Westbrook was there, and that they got on a Zoom together in November to start this process of planning her outfit, which, I mean, I think, honestly, they did a great job covering this draft. The fact that they did not further dive into and ask, how did you get connected on this Zoom in November to make this particular outfit
It's still
happen.
something that I don't know. Did you figure that out?
No, malpractice.
We're going to have to figure it out, because it is crazy. I think that was one of my big fashion moments, was that Russell Westbrook was on the scene because he's a designer. Like, that's
Georgia Amor was wearing Honor the Gift. Yeah.
Yeah, so cool. I thought that was one of the big moments. Speaking of that, like, was there any fashion moments, Ben, you were in the building, that kind of threw you off? We didn't have a Rickea Jackson outfit change moment.
We did.
But
yeah.
Wait, we did? Who?
Paige Bueckers changed outfits.
Paige Bueckers.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Paige Bueckers did change outfits.
She was in a similar color palette. It was like very black, sparkly still, so you'd be forgiven if you didn't quite notice the difference. Yeah.
Well, then forgive me, because I definitely didn't. It's very different than what Rickea did. I mean, Rickea went from completely different sides of the color spectrum and also vibes, like a suit versus a... Anyways, this year's for Paige. So I didn't know that Paige switched it up. I was going to give away a Rickea Jackson, like, fashion award, because, like, who did it best? And I'm between a few people. I think Kiki Iriafen looked stunning in her gold beaded Nigerian garb. I mean, absolutely beautiful dress. Sonia Citron, girl, if she doesn't want to play basketball anymore, I know Coach would hire her. She was wearing this Coach suit, and she was wearing it. It looked amazing on her. But there were so many great fashion moments. Paige, to me, between Paige and Isaiah James, I felt like they just walked off a world tour. Like, they had already finished a musical tour, and then they came back and they were like, oh yeah, let me get drafted to the WNBA. It was just like fitting outfits for stars. For you guys, beyond the fashion and beyond Russell Westbrook, because that was huge.
Were there any special... about Georgia Amor, though, I want to point out
Yeah.
I wrote this on the live blog, but I needed to say it again. The fact that she decided to wear flats as the shortest player in the draft.
Yes, I thought
and specifically told Russell Westbrook, like, we need to style me in flats, is so perfect. And I'm glad that she was rewarded with this just complete, authentic trueness to herself by being drafted 6th overall. Good for Georgia.
Now, for the fashion lovers that are listening to this, and before you go and, like, try and look up Georgia Amor's outfit. No, she's not wearing ballet flats. She just wore, like, flat boots that went with
not
the
heels.
Fit. Not heels is what we're referencing. But yes, it was very Georgia Amor. It felt very much true to her style. And, like, shout out to Russell Westbrook for finding the smallest person in the draft, to outfit for this event. That was really cool. I'll say this before we get going on other guests and things that surprised me. My number one surprise, I was trying to figure out, where's Coach Tara Vanderveer? I kept saying Lindsay Gottlieb, and I'm like, Kiki Iriafen went to Stanford, didn't she, for 4 years? Where was Coach Tara? Did you guys notice? Or Coach Tara? Or 3 years, excuse me. Was she there?
I didn't see her, but I wasn't that surprised by that. Usually coaches who are invited are the coaches of the players, most immediate coaches of the players. And that is often the table with whom they sit, right? So Hailey Van Lith, for instance, was sitting with Mark Campbell, the head coach of TCU. She was not sitting with Kim Mulkey. And I don't even think Jeff Waltz was in attendance, for instance.
I was going to say, she had multiple options in comparison to
be fair, Joni Taylor was there for Sarah Ashley Barker, who started her career at Georgia. So... It is an option.
Okay. What was something else that, like, kind of surprised you guys?
What I would say is watching the draft in person is a very different experience than watching it on TV. Because you're very much, like, in this bubble where the picks just keep on flowing. And, I watched the first couple picks in the main room, in the audience, kind of feeling the energy. And then I went up to the media room and just kind of was part of these press conferences for much of the rest of the night, watching these moments happen largely on screen and then hearing players as they funneled into the room. So it's kind of a different experience than even what Sabreena is doing fully watching it. Like, I'm not really hearing the telecast at a certain point. I'm often just looking up at it. I wrote a story about Paige Bueckers tonight and kind of her night. And I talked to the Wings president and CEO as well for that story. Like, I just kind of got in a bunker. And so it's like, I feel right now as we tape this podcast late on Monday night, like I'm fully starting to digest like the run of show. Like, one of the moments that sticks out to me, sure, it's the players late in the draft, Chen and Griffin, who get called up from the audience from UConn, but also seeing Jocytė when Chicago took her, like looking up out of the corner of my eye and seeing how emotional her dad was when she was talking about her dad. Like, that is a moment that even watching the telecast, having gone upstairs for that moment, that will stick with me from this draft night.
Yeah, no, between Jocytė's father just like trying to hold back tears and Madison Scott's mom also, I was just like, those two kind of knocked me out. And even Holly Rowe was like, she got emotional on Madison Scott's mom. It was just, it goes back to what you're talking about, Ben, that at the end of this, at the core root of this is a life-changing night. And it's interesting because I was at the Valkyries event, and that's the exact same thing that the Valkyries GM, Ohemanyanen, said, that a question was asked about how was it for her to have her very first pick as a GM for the Valkyries. And she was just like, thank you for asking that question. Like, it's unreal to be able to change people's lives. People like you don't know that you meet for the first, like you're meeting for the first time, you didn't know 2 days ago, and you're now about to change their lives, the lives of their families, their schools, etc. So it is really cool. So let's talk about some of the lives that were changed tonight. And let's just run down the first round of draft picks. So, to no one's surprise, Paige Bueckers out of UConn goes to the Dallas Wings. Then at the number 2 spot, France showed up. Dominique Malonga out of the team Lyon Asvel Féminin out of France goes to Seattle Storm. Azzy Magbegor and Dominique Malonga. We won't dive too deep in. And Nneka Ogwumike, of course. I mean, this is a big time pickup for Seattle. Then Washington Mystics were clearing the board with 3 picks in that first round. First up at number 3 was Sonia Citron out of Notre Dame. Then at number 4, they got Kiki Iriafen from USC. And before they got their 6th pick at which was Georgia Amore in her Honor the Gift fit from Kentucky, the Golden State Valkyries surprised a lot of folks in getting Jocytė from Lyon Asvel Féminin, who's also a teammate of Dominique Malonga, a 19-year-old out of Lithuania. She's actually born in D.C., but has pretty much lived in Lithuania her whole life, has played in EuroLeague since she was 13, 14 years old. So the Valkyries pick her up. And then at number 7, Connecticut Sun, they got this pick from Phoenix via New York. There's a lot of picks that got moved earlier on. So the Washington Mystics got their 6th pick from Atlanta via Dallas. Connecticut Sun got their 7th pick from Phoenix via New York, and they got Anissa Morrow from LSU. Connecticut Sun went again at number 8. They got that pick from Indiana. They got Sanaya Rivers from NC State. Los Angeles Sparks, in that big Kelsey Plum trade from Seattle, they got the 9th pick and picked up Sarah Ashley Barker out of Alabama. And then the Chicago Sky from Connecticut got Jocytė from Slovenia. At number 11, Chicago Sky again got a pick from Minnesota Lynx recently. And they picked up Hailey Van Lith from TCU. And then number 12, Dallas Wings from New York via Phoenix got Isaiah James out of NC State. That was a lot of things going on. So hopefully we, on the YouTube, incorporate pictures to ensure that everyone's visually learning as much as I'm also saying all these things. But ultimately, Bueckers, Malonga, Sonia Citron, Kiki Iriafen, Jocytė, Georgia Amore, Anissa Morrow, Sanaya Rivers, Sarah Ashley Barker, Jocytė, Hailey Van Lith, and then Isaiah James. Ben, Sabreena, everybody knew that Paige was going number 1. Everybody knew Dallas has had the number 1 pick since last December. So was there anything about what happened around Paige tonight surprising at all?
I like that Paige called her shot right after she was taken and said, I hope this is also a good night for my UConn teammates. And then two of them ended up getting selected at the end of the third round.
Yes.
That was
cool.
really what stood out to me more than anything, because she got supremely choked up when talking about her team, how much they matter to her. So for her to be able to share in that moment with Caitlin Chen, with Aubrey Griffin, I thought was very cool.
Can I just tie on to that moment real quick? I think there's something to be said about not only did she do that for her teammates and speaking about them, but Nika Mule, who was drafted last year, came back to the draft this year to support her teammate because they said they wanted to be there for each other. So the UConn lineage runs deep, but particularly around Paige, that familial tie. I mean, those ties are strong. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, and Aaliyah Edwards was there too. And it brought me back to last year at the draft. And I actually asked Paige Bueckers about this after this year's draft. I said, I was sitting in the audience last year in 2014, and Paige was a few rows in front of me as Caitlin 2024, as Caitlin Clark was getting called out. She was there to support Nika Mule and Aaliyah Edwards. And I just remember, like, it took Paige a while to find her seat. Like, I think someone had taken her seat and they had to seat her just any which place, like in the back of the theater, like by schlubs like myself. So I asked her about just like how that experience was compared to this year. And she talked about last year, she was really there in a supporting cast role. And I kind of thought that like that might have been the last time that she's ever played a supporting cast role, considering the year that she has had and that what she will play in Dallas. And so it definitely was cool to see her teammates, both current and former, come back and support her. Some of the things that stuck out to me, though, from Paige Bueckers' night and what people from Dallas were talking about with her. I mean, I talked to Greg Bibb, the president and CEO of the franchise. He acknowledged that on the court, she's transformative. And off the court, like, you're going to be able to feel the impact that she can do for Dallas on day one, that she is a needle mover. And already we are starting to see that from a business perspective. They sold out their season tickets just a few days after they won the lottery back in November for the second straight year. You know, they're headed into this new arena downtown. You got to believe like they're going to load up on partnerships even more than they did last year. They just announced a new local TV deal as well. Like, the business of the Dallas Wings are changing and people are well aware of that. Some actual kind of news and notes on the transaction. It seemed like pretty much from moment one, day one, once the ping pong balls fell in their favor, the Dallas Wings were taking Paige Bueckers. Both Greg Bibb and the GM, Curt Miller, were pretty clear about that. And Curt Miller also confirmed that they were never going to trade the number one pick. He was very clear about that. It was always going to be Paige. She was always going to be the selection. And sure enough, she was on Monday night.
Now, I asked folks on Blue Sky and X to comment any questions they had because I knew I was going to be talking to you guys. Michael Coley, also shout out to Michael. He's always supporting us on Blue Sky and sharing our stuff, so thank you. But Michael asked, I know people always ask what team had the best draft, but I'd love to know who had the best draft in terms of winning right away, aka this year. And I would say that would be very accurate for the Dallas Wings. Ben, Sabreena, would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I don't think any player is going to impact winning as much as Paige is this year.
Yeah, just from even what Ben is just mentioning of what Bibb said of just immediate being able to immediately get on the floor and be ready to play and be a decision maker, be someone that can defend and score on multiple levels. Like, this is what Paige brings, and this is what you saw in the championship. Now, someone we didn't see recently in terms of the NCAA championship, but we've been talking about a lot, is Dominique Malonga. And I feel as if in the last week, everything's blown up. I mean, of course, Ben, your wonderful quote, "Hi, I'm Ben. Have you heard about Dominique Malonga?" And obviously the stories you've written online, and Mike Vorkunov also wrote a piece about Dominique Malonga that's live on the site. Meet the new number 2 that's in Seattle. And when you look at Seattle, one of the stats that stand out for me is that they are, I think, 11th in opponent rebounding in general, which I thought was pretty surprising considering the height and the length that they have on that team. But they also are pretty low in the league in terms of their opponents' offensive rebounding and opponents' points in the paint. Now, that might be an indication on their perimeter play, people being able to get past their perimeter defenders, but I'm sure it's something that Dominique Malonga can help with in terms of the size that she brings, etc. When I think about who fits really well with their team, Dominique feels like the best fit, in my opinion, especially with those around her. Ben, talk to me about how Dominique is going to fit into the Seattle Storm franchise that's just on the cusp of being a contender.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle is a place where I think she can both play in the present, but also develop. Like, she's not going to have to play big minutes right away. Presumably, they're still going to roll with Ezi Magbagor and Nneka Ogwumike in their front court, and they'll be able to kind of work Dominique Malonga in as they see fit and allow her to learn under the tutelage of both of those all-star caliber bigs. And this is really not necessarily just a pick for the present. She's 19 years old, but this is a pick for their future. I think the Seattle Storm had a very good night overall, but I will say on this pick in particular, like one of the big winners, international players, 3 international players in the top 10. It's really, it's the most in, we'll call it the modern era of the WNBA. Like technically 1998 and 2000 had 3, but that's kind of in this expansion draft entry to the WNBA era. So this is a different kind of story. Another big winner of the night, Asvel Lyon, the club in France where both Jocytė and Dominique Malonga played. To have 2 of the top 5 picks in the WNBA draft is a pretty big deal. That's a club that's owned by Tony Parker. He runs that club, the former San Antonio Spurs guard. Their head coach currently is a former Chicago Sky assistant coach, who is very familiar, obviously, with the WNBA for multiple years. He worked under James Wade before going back to France. Like, it's a great pick for the future, and it also should benefit them in the present.
Okay, now it feels as if, a lot of people were saying, well, like, now that Olivia Miles isn't in this draft, if it makes sense that Dominique Malonga is going to go to 2. And then even Andrea Carter said that even if Olivia Miles was in this draft, it made sense that, Dominique Malonga would go as high as she did. Now, there were some players that were surprising in where they went, but I think there was a good point made by Rebecca Lobo that it's not about what number you go, but more so about the fit of the team. That being said, people still look at the numbers. When did you go? That is always something that, people always have in the back of their mind. Why did you drop? Why did you go up? Sabreena, I have some questions in my DMs about, whoa, Jocytė. That was not expected for the Golden State Valkyries. People were thinking that the Valkyries were going to choose Aneesa Morrow. That was a surprise for me. Was it a surprise for you?
Not at all. I had Jocytė going to the Mystics at 4, actually, ahead of the Valkyries. And I specifically wrote in the last mock draft, like, the Mystics, if they want her, will have to take her here because Golden State will take her at 5 if she is available. And lo and behold, she was available at 5 and Golden State took her. It's interesting, when we got league expansion in the WNBA, I think a lot of people were really excited for more college players to have a chance to land in these roster spots in the W. And, the players that you're familiar with domestically that don't make the league, like the Taylor Mike-Sells or Monica Sonanos of the world, getting to land on a WNBA roster. And Golden State sort of showing us that, like, no, we don't think that the domestic players are the ones who are missing out on the W. We think the international ones are the ones who are missing out on the W. You look at the Golden State roster, and they have more than a half dozen European players on their roster, not even including Stephanie Talbot, who's also international, but she's from Australia. And these are players who have mostly played in the EuroLeague and European leagues and haven't had an opportunity to come over to the W as often, as you might infer from someone of their talent level. And I think it's just a very interesting way to build a roster, by taking advantage of this overlooked, untapped area of talent and bringing them over to the W. I think it requires an exceptional level of relationship building, right? Because historically, it's been hard to get players to want to play year-round and play away from their homes during the summers when they could just be taking some time off. It's not as financially profitable as it is to play in Europe.
Sure.
So for Golden State to make this splash in year 1, to have all of these international players who have already committed to come play in Golden State, again, in a year with Eurobasket, when a lot of these players are going to have to go play for their international teams during June, I just think it's a fascinating approach to roster building, one that I did not expect when the WNBA added another team. I don't think it honestly creates a lot of lessons for Toronto and Portland because it's a very different route than every other team can take. But when there was a good European player at number 5, it was of absolutely no surprise to me that that is where Golden State's option was.
Yeah, it definitely fit their even their expansion draft approach, right? It fit their theme so far. And also big guards. It looks like, Golden State very much values big guards, big wings, scorers, all of which Jocytė is. But now, Ben, I'm looking at some of the players that were stateside. And I'm particularly looking at the Washington Mystics cleaned up it feels like, with a Sonia Citron, a Kiki Iriafen, and a Georgia Amore. And some people are thought that Kiki might have gone over Sonia, whatever. I don't know if you really care about the numbers here, but this is a great young core that they've now invited to come to training camp, essentially, because we don't know if they're going to make these teams or not. But still, any surprises about how Washington utilized their 3 picks to kind of start the rebuild out in DC?
Honestly, Zena, not really. Because if you look at the Washington Mystics roster heading into the draft, they barely had any guards on the roster. They had Jade Melbourne, who is one of the youngest players in the WNBA, Brittany Sykes, who is kind of the veteran in the locker room, and Shug Sutton. And everybody else on the team is a forward or a center. So it was pretty clear if you were going to look at their roster that they were going to need to hit guard early and often, and that is exactly what they did. 2 of their first 3 picks are guards. I think Georgia Amore is someone who everyone said, like, at worst, she's going to be a backup point guard in the league, and that is a perfectly fine pick to make.
Absolutely.
At number 6, Sonia Citron, I think Sabreena and I, from just talking to executives around the league over the last month, I think really emerged as the number 3 pick, and it was rare that you heard a bad word about her throughout the draft process and as the draft approached. What was interesting is, like, someone like Shai Sellers, like, she ends up going to Golden State in the 2nd round. You mentioned big guards. It wouldn't have been crazy to see her go in that number 6 spot. Like, I think we had thought that was certainly a realistic possibility, Sabreena and I. She obviously lands in Golden State, which I think is a really good place for her, where she'll have an opportunity to play. Washington elects to go with Amore instead, and elects to go with some of the other guards who were still on the board. But I kind of like what the Mystics are doing. And in Iriafen, like, again, her and Aaliyah Edwards, that was a comparison that one general manager made to me and said they're very similar players, a little different in size, but similar skill set. So it's going to be interesting to see how they can kind of complement each other and bring the best out of each other. And then you have Shakira Austin in the front court. So overall, like what Washington did with its first 3 picks, again, 2nd round. And I know we should say, like, a lot of these players in the 2nd round might not make teams, but they take Lucy Olson at the end of the 2nd round, another guard who can score the basketball. Like, there was clearly a trend. They recognized that they needed some backcourt help, and they went out and did that with 3 of their first 4 selections on Monday night.
I just want to caveat what Ben said about players making the Washington roster. They came into this draft with 8 players signed to contracts. Keep in mind, you can bring 18 to training camp. So if you were selected by the Washington Mystics, you should feel very good about your prospects to eventually play in the WNBA. Even if you're Lucy Olson, getting selected at number 23 in this draft, like, this is a better opportunity than you could expect basically anywhere else getting selected at number 23.
There you go. Wow. I'm just I was thinking as I was watching the draft, I was like, the Wizards and the Mystics are just going to be a problem in a few years. And it's just going to be fun basketball happening in the city of Washington, D.C.
If they hit on these drafts, if they hit on these drafts.
You're right.
They could be in a few years. A lot of conditionals there.
Speaking of guards, and thinking of guards that could be transformational for a team, at least for a team's branding, for sure. Hailey Van Lith ends up going to Chicago. And the first thing I'm looking and thinking about is Angel Reese. This is an opportunity for them for redemption, right? This is Hailey Van Lith, Angel Reese. They were teamed up at LSU before Angel Reese graduated, and Hailey Van Lith made the transfer over to TCU. There's no Kennedy Carter signing as of yet, re-signing to Chicago. And Dana Evans left and went to Las Vegas. So it feels as if the space is wide open for Hailey to come in and make an impact. Were you guys shocked, or is this once again not surprising that Chicago chose Hailey Van Lith at number 11?
She's given an opportunity here in Chicago to really learn from Courtney Vandersloot, who, seems like she's in the last chapter of her career and has just returned to the Chicago Sky in free agency after the last 2 years with New York. And so I think that's a really good person to learn from if you're Hailey Van Lith, right? Another kind of smaller guard. They obviously have, different games a little bit, but Vandersloot, one of the most professionals around is one of the things you can still say about her. And so in that regard, I do like the fit. just having the opportunity to learn. On the topic of Angel, and then Sabreena can go more into it, the very first thing that Hailey Van Lith was asked about at her press conference was about her relationship with Angel. And she said that Angel had maintained contact with her this entire past year. Hailey used the word mature relationship and like a mutual respect relationship. That was part of the phrase that she used. She said they're both dogs in kind of the most complimentary way, and just their intensity, how they carry themselves. So, Hailey seems like she said that she was excited to be in an environment with Angel Reese again. And certainly that is one of the headline selections of the night, just kind of reuniting this pair. Albeit it didn't exactly work out at LSU. And so hopefully kind of a different context, if you're a Chicago Sky fan, breeds a different result.
Yeah, I mean, Angel Reese basically tweeted the same thing, right? Like, we didn't do it right the first time, and now we can run it back. I don't know. I'm not as high on this pick, I think, as some other people were. I don't really love Hailey Van Lith in a place where, like, she doesn't have the ball in her hands as often. And there's already a lot of ball handlers on Chicago in terms of, like, Courtney Vandersloot and Mariah Jefferson. And, like, they even are probably going to run a lot of their offense through the post, which we saw was not a great fit for Hailey Van Lith at LSU. And I realize she's a evolved player since then. But I don't know. I thought Chicago was going to target, like, more shooting and off-ball players with this particular pick. And Hailey Van Lith, like, not the best catch-and-shoot three-point shooter, like, not an elite three-point shooter by any means. So I'm happy to see that, like, the work that she did to go to TCU to sort of rewrite this chapter of her career paid off. Like, she obviously deserves to be selected in the first round of the WNBA draft. This particular setting is a little strange to me.
Okay. That's a good point. I didn't think about the other guard play and how much those guards are set up to be distributors and facilitators. And Hailey is also that person, but usually she's a facilitator for her own offense, and that's going to require a lot more ball, her on ball more so than off ball. Okay, good. This is why we talk to the experts, y'all. Okay, we just talked about the Washington Mystics having 8 people on their roster. Before we kind of shift conversation here, Connecticut. Okay, Connecticut was a team, and I'm going to actually quote one of our other questions that came in from Blue Sky at Book Mill. Said the tagline for the Sun pick was they quote, "We're the first playoff team in NBA/WNBA history to lose all 5 starters in the ensuing offseason." Ben, you're laughing, but it's true. Based on who they drafted tonight, which was Anissa Morrow at number 7 and Sanaya Rivers at number 8. And then I believe they got some in the
Rhea Marshall in the second round.
And they got Rhea Marshall in the second round. Thank you. Let me finish the question. Assuming they'll continue to make Mabry stay, which is this interesting dynamic that developed last year and going into this season or last offseason, how do they look? Open the floor.
Well, if you're a rookie, this is a good place for you because as you outlined, this is a team that appears to be rebuilding, has some roster spots, and is just looking to inject itself with talent and doesn't exactly have highest expectations this year. And Anissa Morrow was asked about that straight away when she sat down at her press conference that, she recognized that she has an opportunity in front of her that she can take advantage of. Like, if you told me that Anissa Morrow, she'll probably lead all rookies in rebounding. I think that's a safe bet considering how much she's going to have to do. But it also wouldn't be shocking if, frankly, she led all rookies in scoring. Like, I know that's a little bit of a hot take, but she's going to get a lot of looks, right? Like, and I know there are other scorers. Someone like Paige Bueckers might be the odds-on favorite to lead all rookies in scoring, but, like, Anissa Morrow can score, and someone's got to put the ball in the basket, right? And, like, what do they say? Like, if a team averages, 80 points a game, like, somehow you got to get to 80, right? Or if you get 100 points a game, somehow you got to get to 100, right? Like, someone's going to have to be a 15, 20-point scorer on this team other than just Marina Mabry, and Anissa Morrow could definitely be that player. And the same is true with Sanaya Rivers. Like, another really good fit for her. Like, she is a player that's super athletic that people were really high on, but she has an obvious hole in her game and that she's not a very good shooter. And so this is an opportunity for her she's going to have the basketball in her hands a lot. And in theory, it's going to be okay if she misses shots. Like, Connecticut is going to ride with her, whether she converts from deep or not. And that is the kind of place you want to be in if you're a young player who's looking to get developmental opportunities. So in regards to those picks, like if I'm those players, I'm pretty happy with the landing spot I ended up in.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that, of course, Connecticut Sun are going to go through an identity shift. They're under new coaching, but what they were known for so long was their defense, especially with DiJonai Carrington at the helm of that. And I look at Saniya Rivers being like the next iteration of that. And then, of course, DiJonai also helping with the transition offense. Saniya Rivers also being a person that can help with that for the Connecticut Sun. So it could be a really good fit. Looking throughout the rest of the draft, all the rounds, are there any players that seem like they're a really good fit? One of the ones that I noticed and I tweeted about was Michaela Timpson, KK Timpson out of Florida State, going to the Indiana Fever. Indiana just lost Temi Fagbenle in the expansion draft to the Valkyries. KK Timpson is a rim runner. She is a shot blocker. She's incredibly athletic, a little bit smaller than Temi was, but played well in the pick and roll with Tenaya Latson at Florida State. I feel like this is a really good fit in terms of her filling in that hole. Were there any others players that you guys were like, as soon as you heard their name go out, you're like, ooh, good for them. They found a good home.
I like Serena Sundell in Seattle a lot. I mean, I've been hyping up Serena Sundell for a few weeks here, so she'll come as no surprise that I was happy to see her drafted, albeit much later than I expected it to happen. Going into Seattle, team that doesn't have a ton of guard depth right now. I mean, they have Skylar Diggins-Smith, Lexi Brown, Gabby Williams is kind of a guard maybe, but to come in there and be a backup point guard right away, a little bit of a spacer next to Skylar Diggins-Smith, I think is a good spot for her. And I also like that Seattle drafted Madison Connor because Seattle was the worst three-point shooting team in the WNBA last year. I think they shot about 29% on threes, and Madison Connor led the NCAA in three-point makes. She shot about 45% on threes. So, again, third-round pick, you don't really expect to make a roster, but Seattle is another one of these situations where they've had a lot of offseason injuries. You know, Nika Mule, Jordan Horston out for the season. There are opportunities to potentially make some noise in training camp, and I like those two fits, even if they are third-rounders, to potentially make that opening night roster.
A lot of people talking about Serena Sundell might be a steal, having gone so low. And I really love that her brother plays for the Seattle Seahawks. Thought that was pretty adorable to learn. Ben, what about you? Any players that stood out to you in terms of their potential fit for where they were drafted?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with a player who plays a very similar role to those that Sabreena just mapped out, and that is Te-Hina Paopao going to Atlanta at number 18. Again, Sabreena mentioned some things about Seattle not being a very good three-point shooting team. That was true of the Atlanta Dream last year, and their new coach, Carl Smesco, comes from FGCU, where they took a ton of threes every single year. Barely even knew that two-pointers were part of basketball. So really like this fit for Te-Hina Paopao. You know, she was the NCAA leading scorer from three-point range in 23-24 that season. If she can come in and make shots, like she's playing her role and she can do that well, right? Like that is what they're going to ask for her, to be a floor spacer, to be kind of a secondary ball handler or primary ball handler when she comes in off the bench. Like, again, they're not going to ask a ton of her right away. You have Jordan Canada, you have Alicia Gray, you have Ryan Howard, you have plenty of playmakers. But if Paopao can defend, something she worked a lot out at South Carolina, and she gives a lot of credit to the South Carolina coaches for helping her improve that aspect of her game, and she can make three-pointers, like she has an opportunity to stick with the dream. And so in that regard, for a second-round pick, I think that's a pretty good fit for her.
Okay. Now, we talked a little bit about, you know, Chicago. Hailey may not be the best fit, but I was curious if there were any other pairings, decisions that teams made, where players were drafted that you felt were like, ooh, somebody lost in this situation. I hate to use the word losers because I just feel like no one really lost tonight. People were drafted, their dreams were made true. But was there anyone that were like, this ain't gonna work out the way we might think it should work out?
Kind of hate the Saniya Rivers fit, actually, in Connecticut. I really like Saniya Rivers with the ball in her hands as a point guard. I know a lot of people have projected her as a wing at the next level. I don't really think that's where she's best suited, mostly because, again, she's not really much of a shooter at this point. I think the NC State offense really worked when she was running the show, and like Zoe Brooks was sort of a secondary playmaker, Isaiah James was the play finisher. And you look at Connecticut, well, what do they have? They have ball handlers and Layla Lacan, JC Sheldon, Lindsay Allen, like Diamond DeShields likes to have the ball in her hands. So it's a team where I think there's going to be less opportunities for her to play pure point guard. And I also think Rivers does really well with spacing around her. And they have no shooting on this Connecticut team. Like, especially drafted right after Anissa Morrow. It's like the first thing you think of is that Anissa Morrow is like not really a long distance shooter. Just that pairing, strange to me. So I love Sinai Rivers. I think she's like one of my favorite players in this draft. I just really did not like this particular landing spot for her.
Okay. All right. Fair. Ben, what about you?
I mean, one of my favorite things from this night is just looking at the teams that you can give an incomplete grade to. Like, I appreciate the New York Liberty for coming to play, I guess. I don't know what the right analogy is, but
they're like, we hosted y'all, don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, literally, like the last pick of the night, their one selection being a French player who, I got to assume is not going to come over this year and be part of training camp. It's just like New York clearly has a plan. Obviously, like they're in win now mode. They want to build, and they want to accumulate some assets for the future. Their GM Jonathan Kolb, in a release, said that they pride themselves on embracing the global nature of the game and are proactive in assembling a deep group of international talent. It's like, yep, that is true, and that was clearly their approach. And I just would have loved to see what their war room was like and the conversations were like as players were coming off the board. So that was one fun one. Similar, the Minnesota Lynx. I mentioned Kosu. She was actually a player that people really like in Russia, and she's been playing pro since she was 15 years old. Cheryl Reeves seemed to actually make it seem like she is going to come over this year. She said that they're going to have to figure out some of her kind of immigration status paperwork as it relates to coming over from Russia to the United States in this time, this political time. And Cheryl Reef did kind of allude to conversations between Trump and Putin, and she kind of made a light little joke about that, I should say. Okay. But, we'll see what happens with Kosu. And if not, like the Minnesota Lynx, again, the other team in the finals, we'll call it an incomplete grade. Aubrey Griffin is a really nice story. I think a great moment on draft night. We'll see if she'll actually make this roster. I'm not betting it, but those were two kind of, I don't know, light stories, light other teams that thank you for playing last year's final.
At least they showed up, Ben. Phoenix didn't even have a pick in this draft.
It's a great point.
I'm like listing the teams as I'm trying to, write winners and losers. Like, I can only get to 12 because Phoenix is literally not here.
Sabreena, what do you think their war room was like?
From Phoenix.
Did they have a war room is the question.
We'll have to get on that at The Athletic.
Oh, yeah, that'd be interesting to know. Did they actually gather to see what happened? Did they watch it with popcorn? Where they were just like, this is our competition next year with the... or who should we potentially invite to training camp who doesn't make it? Or, what's going to be left over, essentially, after all of these draftees go through it? I'll say the main big loser here. I'll use loser. The big loser here is Yale women's basketball. Harvard got drafted. Princeton got drafted.
We're talking about Caitlin Chen for Princeton?
Correct.
Yeah, we'll allow that, certainly.
Princeton counts, absolutely. I think Caitlin got a degree from Princeton. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yale did not. So in the HYP, Yale did not show up for this draft. And so they lost in that category. Okay. Let's keep it moving. I don't want to be too somber on that note. We got a question from Quest Lova. Just said that out loud for the first time. At Quest Lova on Blue Sky, could you speak on the Sparks and how their picks will support the team?
I'll lay out here, Sabreena. All you.
Yeah, so the Sparks, rough draft season dating back to the lottery when they had the best odds and did not get the number one pick. So you go into this situation already without Paige Bueckers. They ended up with 9, and their second pick was at 21 and then 28. Gotta be honest, don't love any of the selections here. Sarah Ashley Barker, I know, was a bit of a draft riser. Obviously had a great showing in the NCAA tournament. I'm always a little worried about players who put their best film when they're older than everybody else in college. She was a fifth-year senior this year. And first 3 years were kind of iffy for Sarah Ashley Barker. I'm not going to discount improvement, but are you getting better or are you just bigger than all the 18-year-olds you're playing against? Don't know. And then they had an opportunity in the second round to take Serena Sundell. Every time Cathy Engelbert got to the podium, I'm thinking, all right, this is Sundell's time. And then it was somebody else's name who got
That's why she feels like
announced.
she might be the steal. Yeah.
They took Sanaya Fagan in the second round, which I just don't really get the fit next to Cam Brink and Rickea Jackson. I realize Sanaya Fagan has played next to one other post player for the majority of her South Carolina career, which, again, another player who just hasn't had a lot of film up until her senior season because of all of the posts that she had to play behind in the rotation. But I don't know, you got Azrae Stevens, you got Dearica Hamby, you got Cameron Brink, you got Rickea Jackson. Like, where is Sanaya Fagan supposed to fit in here? I don't really know. So just a strange draft for me.
Okay. I hope that helps your question, Quest Lava. But as you've said that, it makes me also think of being bigger than everyone else. Sedona Prince, someone not invited to the WNBA draft and also not drafted in this WNBA draft, and someone that's also significantly older and has had more experience than most people in this draft. Thoughts on Sedona Prince and, what does her basketball future potentially look like, Ben?
I think we're going to have to see if a team elects to sign her to a training camp contract. WNBA franchises were kind of weighing a lot of different factors as it related to Sedona Prince. They were weighing her upside. Obviously, she had a great year at TCU, her last 2 years, the best 2 years of her college career, against her age. She's 24 years old right now, and her injury history. She had multiple significant injuries throughout her college career. And they're weighing all that against the history and the potential repercussions from multiple domestic abuse allegations which she denied, and her lawyer denied. So they were kind of weighing all of those factors as, they tried to determine whether to draft her. And we had a number of general managers kind of talk about that you've got to take it all into consideration, and you've got to take the domestic abuse allegations into consideration as it relates to her. People acknowledged that there was everything that was happening off court, and also that she was really productive. And it seems like, at least for now, teams have made the decision that for whatever reason, they didn't think that she was worthy of a pick, whether that is because of, again, the abuse allegations, or because she's older and has an injury history. We don't really know those exact factors now without actually talking to team personnel, but that's kind of the state of play with her. We'll see if she makes a camp or if she goes on to play overseas somewhere and it's a big TBD.
I will say that we spoke to most executives prior to the NCAA tournament, which was, one, before she had this absolute stinker against Texas in the Elite Eight, and two, before any of those executives had a chance to speak with Sedona one-on-one once her season was over. So although I sort of came away from those conversations thinking she would get drafted, a lot has happened since that time that could have changed perspectives.
I'm sure a lot of teams continue to do their due diligence, and ultimately internal conversations led to the decisions that were made today. One other thing that we should know for the week, and we got to talk about it. Paige Bueckers signed a 3-year deal with the Unrivaled Basketball League. Of course, that league launched earlier this year and was a crazy phenomenon, a striking success overall. And Unrivaled is going to pay Paige Bueckers more than $330,000 for essentially 10 weeks of basketball. And the reason why that matters and why that's interesting is because a rookie deal for 4 years is just $338,000. So yeah, there's questions about Paige being able to make just as much money in 1 year with Unrivaled. Does that put pressure on the WNBA? Well, Sabreena and Ben, you guys were in the presser with the WNBA commissioner, Cathy Engelbert, when she was asked about Unrivaled. Not particularly this question about Paige Bueckers signing with Unrivaled, but clearly this example of Paige is just another example of ways that Unrivaled is finding opportunities to compensate, support, accommodate players in a way that the WNBA has not been able to figure out yet. Number one being money. How was Cathy's response to questions about Unrivaled, and what was the main message?
She was actually asked point blank about Paige Bueckers signing this deal with Unrivaled. That is, as you mentioned, Zena, it is actually worth more than her entire rookie salary, according to the people that I talked to about it. And
in
Cathy, in year one, yeah. Cathy, how should I put this? She seemed to conflate the news that came out this weekend on Sunday about Paige Bueckers signing this 3-year deal with the NIL partnership that she had signed earlier this fall with Unrivaled. So it wasn't exactly a surprise, just to back up even further, that Paige is going to Unrivaled. She signed this Unrivaled partnership, had been promoting them, like wearing their apparel, for instance, throughout their debut season. And so Cathy Engelbert said that she thought it was already announced that Paige was signing a 3-year deal with them, and that was not the case. So that was a little bit of a mix-up. In general, she just kind of pivoted and talked about how proud she was of Napheesa Collier and Brianna Stewart for creating the league. She acknowledged that she had went down to Unrivaled. She kind of said that it's a lot easier to do with 30 in one spot. Of course, Unrivaled has 36 players plus. She talked about travel differences and the kind of footprint differences. So, again, she was not exactly glowing in her assessment of the new league. She said that the players played hard, that they had fun. She acknowledged that the court sizes are different.
Shot clock's different.
Shot clock's different, that a lot of their fans come in for games. Look, like she said, we'll look to innovate at anything that works and see what we can incorporate in our game. I will say, if you're looking for ideas on how the WNBA can learn from Unrivaled, you're better off reading the reporting that I did, not to plug my own story, back in March, than reading the transcript or rewatching Cathy Engelbert's comments about how Unrivaled could impact the WNBA.
Now, the question is like, how is Unrivaled going to play alongside the WNBA moving forward, especially when this kind of tension is starting to become apparent to people beyond the annals of the executives, right? Like, we're starting to see it publicly. Like, how is this going to blend nicely?
Well, this is a particularly interesting time in the relationship between Unrivaled and the WNBA, because the other backdrop to all this is the ongoing CBA negotiation between the players and the league. And Unrivaled is obviously the players' league, right? All the players are shareholders in this league. They are running the show, and the player experience is everything for this league. And so in my mind, and again, this is me speaking, not Cathy Engelbert, like you have to kind of play this, you're walking this tightrope, you're doing this dance about how much credit do you want to give the players for innovating and changing player experience while you're, involved in this ongoing negotiation that is high stakes and will shape the future of the league. So that to me seems to be some of the underlying dynamics at play. Again, that's me kind of reading into the situation and thinking about some of the context that is going on here.
Well, shout out to Paige for locking in some money early on in 2 leagues, or ultimately. And also congratulations to everyone that was drafted tonight or last night at the time that you're listening to this. Another generation is on the way. Remember, guys, the journey just starts for these folks. They're not immediately signed to rosters. They have to go to training camp and fight for a spot. So do not be surprised if your fave is not rocking a jersey by the time the season comes, because they do still have to get onto a roster. And last but not least, before we go, we're going to talk about this at another time, but Mylesia Fulwiley is in the portal. I talked about this with Chantel Jennings, that I thought this was going to happen. It did. We will keep you posted when new news comes about. That is it for today. We will be back with y'all on Friday talking about the dawn of a new era for the WNBA with players like Diana, Sue Bird, Candace Parker, all in retirement. The baton is being passed. It's Caitlin, it's Paige, it's Angel, Camilla, Dominique, and all the rest. These are the ones that are going to have to step up. Who is going to outshine who? How will things change? And we'll talk to a major new exec in the space. Well, she's not new to basketball. She's been here for a while, but she is the new Washington Mystics GM, Jamila Weidman. You do not want to miss that conversation. She is phenomenal. And if you are new here, hit that follow button wherever you're listening so you can stay up to date with us. And please come find us on YouTube. Leave us comments wherever you're listening. We read them. We try to incorporate them as you saw today's show, but please, and if you're so kind, give us a rating, like the 5 ones. Those 5 ones are wonderful. Anything less looks a little tacky. So, give us the 5. We appreciate criticism, but the 5 is great. Really helps new people find the show as well. And don't forget, as always, there's more to read and watch over at our partner, the Yahoo Sports Hub. So check it out at sports.yahoo.com/women-sports. Women. Because women is already plural. On behalf of The Athletic, I'm Zena Kata. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to No Off Season. To hear more, be sure to like and subscribe. We drop new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.